everybody. It's Stephen and Walter. In case you didn't know who that was sitting next to me, maybe I replaced him. I haven't yet. Thinking about it though. So welcome to another episode of So Chatty, episode 136. And we're continuing today on session 7 of our embroidery series. Today we're going to be talking about freestanding lace, which is another one of my favorite things to do.
Also known as FSL.
Also known as FSL. And sometimes the F can stand for more than freestanding lace, if you get my drift. But hopefully we'll take the mystery out of that. But before we do, let's take a look at what we've been working on. And when I say we, I mean me, because you haven't done the show today, do you?
Well, I'm working on a shirt, but finishing a shirt, actually.
Yeah. And he's working on a quilt, sort of, as well. Yeah.
Well, I started cutting the pieces out for it. I don't know when I'll get to it. Probably won't get to it until after we come back from vacation.
But we'll talk more about that on Stephen and Walter Live, S&W Live, this coming Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. And just while I've got everybody here, reminder, clocks where we live, and probably in most of North America, I guess, although there is a couple of provinces, I think, that don't do the shift, we are springing ahead Saturday night, 1 hour. We'll be on Stephen and Walter Live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time as usual, but just in case you don't adjust your clocks an hour ahead, you'll have to keep that in mind, that we will actually be on an hour later for you if your clock doesn't go ahead. Are you confused? Probably. We'll see how many people actually don't have a problem with that. Okay, so let's take a look at what I've been working on. So here it is. I have finished it. This is my second original pattern. I designed the pattern for this. I call it Windmills and Stars, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. What do you think, Walter?
It looks nice. I'd call it X's and O's, but
I don't see an O anywhere on there.
I'm just being difficult.
Oh, you're always difficult. You have to be. You are. Anyways, it is Windmills and Stars. And the pattern, I will be releasing a free pattern for this, my pattern, in around about the last week in April, the week before that we have the retreat. And speaking of the retreat, there will be some details probably come out later next week or the beginning of the next week, just before we go to Australia. With a sort of an overview of what to expect from this spring's retreat and important dates like when am I going to open up registration for it and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned. And then once we get back from Australia, I'll be opening it up on a specific date for registration and we get things going. So that's just a little advance notice for you. If you're interested in the retreat, you can pencil it in. For May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And what other announcements? Oh, I have one more thing to show you too. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. This I just finished. This was a panel, and I saw a pattern. It's by Bella Rosa Designs, and they used a different panel, but the technique is the same. And I thought, well, that's a great way to show off a panel. And I had this one with the gears. And actually, this was a whole line of fabric that I bought, well over a year ago. And I actually started cutting the pieces out, not for this pattern, for a different pattern. And then I discovered that you had to do some fussy cutting in one of the pieces to get these gears, and you had to applique them on it, and I wasn't really interested in doing that. So it sat in the box, and then I saw this pattern at Kawartha Quilting. It's called Grand Prize. It has a horse on it actually in the panel, but I really liked how they went around the outside of it, and so I just followed the pattern, but I used my fabrics and I added the borders as well. It didn't have borders on it. So it's all quilted now as well, and I'm going to talk about the quilting on Idiot Quilter next week in a little bit more detail, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. What do you think, Walter?
It looks really nice.
Okay.
He's not a little bit of...
He chokes up when he tries to pay me a compliment. Yeah, see, he's not used to doing that. Anything else to show here? I think the next slide. No, I don't want to show that yet. So back to us. Okay, and other announcements. Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen is happening this coming Wednesday. Happens on the Wednesday of every week, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, there's going to be some changes. We've had some people ask, will there be a Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen while we're in Australia? Yes, there will be, but of course I won't be on it. I might make a candid appearance depending on internet connections and the time as well, how that all works out, because Australia is ahead of us by about, well, depending on what part of Australia we happen to be in at the time, by about what, 12 hours,
I think 16? It's about 16 hours.
16 hours or something like that. So I'll be coming to you from the future if I make a candid appearance. Or we will be, because Walter will be there too. And but Stephanie will be carrying on. However, the link for sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, when we're gone, the link for it is different than the link that I usually have in the show notes. It'll be in her show notes. So just keep that in mind. But we'll be reminding you of that as we get closer to when we go on our trip. Pop-up sew day. I'm going to have one because basically won't be having another one for probably about 4 to 5 weeks. I mean, when we come back, we're suddenly going to be almost into the retreat and everything like that. So I'm having one on Saturday, March the 16th. That's 1 week from tomorrow. As we record this, we're recording this on March the 8th. So tomorrow will be the 9th. And so 7 and 9 make 16. So it'll be March the 16th. Yeah. Starting at 8 a.m., running until about 5 p.m. And all are welcome. Come work on whatever, come and go. Most of you that show up for a pop-up sew day know how that works. But if you're new, new people are welcome. No problem. You'll have a good time. Guaranteed. Okay, so I think that's all the announcements. Do you have any announcements? You're not pregnant. You don't have a horrible disease.
I might have a horrible disease.
Oh, we'll sit somewhere else. Jeez. Whatever. He is joking. Well, I don't want to see any comments, but oh, poor Walter, what's he dying from? Boredom. Okay. So today, what we're going to talk about, freestanding lace. So, what is freestanding lace?
It's basically embroidery without any backing.
Yeah, that's the freestanding part.
It's all thread.
It's all thread. And you may say, well, then what's it hang on to? Well, you do use stabilizer. We'll talk about that in a minute, but a special stabilizer. But it is just basically threads being weaved in and out in a close weave and layered upon each other, and that's what gives it its support.
If you think of what a standard crochet doily is, that's similar.
Yeah, that basically, yeah. And speaking of which, you can get designs in freestanding lace that are doilies. Yeah. And look, pretty much just like someone crocheted the doily. Anyway, but here is an example of a freestanding lace. Now, you notice you can see through him. He's somewhat transparent. And that's all thread. And if you look at the back of them, pretty much looks the same.
And did you know that was using a white bobbin?
Yes, it was. And we're going to talk about that. Because I know some of you think, oh, well, you have to switch your bobbin colors all the time. And there's about 5 different colors in this. And nope, didn't have to once at all. And that goes against what you will read in instructions for freestanding lace. Many of them will say, okay, pre-wind your bobbins to match the color of threads you're going to use in your piece. I've only ever done that once and had a horrible time with it, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, you don't need to worry about it. These do take a long time, however, to make, depending on how big they are, because I mean, there's a lot of stitches in this little sucker. This little sucker has over 40,000 stitches, okay? And he took 101 minutes, actually longer than that, because, you know, you have to stop and change your thread colors for it as well. So, but we're going to talk a little bit more detail. I'm going to show you some other examples in a minute. So essentially, freestanding laces, as Walter said, it is basically just thread. There is no fabric in it or anything like that. Okay, so where do you get designs like this? Well, I've got a link here. Now, every embroidery site has freestanding lace, all kinds of them. And I'll show you the screen here. So this is OESD. And they're probably one of the biggest online suppliers of all embroidery designs.
They do tend to have a lot of freestanding lace here.
They do. They have pages of them. In fact, let's go 96. There's actually more than 96.
Yeah, as you see there, it says 1 to 96 of 15,000.
No, 1,543
designs.
Yeah. So there's a lot. You can go down a rabbit hole here and looking, and they're beautiful. The designs are beautiful. Now, you know how we're talking about a doily? Right there. Freestanding lace doily. And right now they're having a sale, $1. And usually freestanding lace things, unless it's a project, are not all that expensive. Now you can see here various prices, but they're not just, they've got Christmas ornaments, like snowflakes, things like that. They've got, this is actually a tea light holder. That would be battery operated tea light. Okay, I know it probably goes without saying, do not put a lighted candle inside one of these things because, well, there goes your lace up in flames. There's even ones that you can do. Now, they're calling them freestanding lace, but this is why. I don't know why they're showing these ones. These are more standard embroidery. But here, this is what they actually call cut work. And you'll notice that part of it here that's hanging out over the edge of that napkin is actually freestanding lace. And the holes that are in here, this is referred to as cut work because you actually cut out the fabric and then it stitches around it to bind it all in there. I have done a little bit of that. It gives it a very elegant look on a very nice like linen napkin.
You can combine fabric in some of them, and that's sort of what they call freestanding applique.
Yeah, freestanding applique. So you see in here they have both of those. So these are not completely thread. They are done on fabric as well, but much more intricate on the edges than just a plain applique. So there's lots of things. Now, this is a 3D, freestanding 3D object, the Eiffel Tower. We're going to talk about that next week, how you make those. And we'll show you some examples because we've made quite a few of them. But you can see the wide variety of things you can make from this. They tend to use these as things for different seasons, like you've seen Christmas, and there's Easter here as well. But there's all kinds of, you can actually make yourself freestanding lace flowers. Now, we have tried that, and I must say I didn't enjoy making them.
No, I didn't either.
They were very piddly because they don't make them the way you see them there. They're a long strip.
And you have to roll them to get the flower shape, and it's very tedious. They take an awful long time to make one flower.
Yes,
hours.
So if you're going to make a bouquet, prepare to never have a life again in a year. This angel, I have made several of these angels, and they are a combination of freestanding lace but they stand up. They're three-dimensional. There isn't any fabric in those. They're all thread, but I've made several of them, and they look very, very nice. They're great as a tree topper at Christmas, but you can see, you can see the wide variety of things you have here. There's coasters. There's all kinds of things. Like I said, you can go down the rabbit hole in these when you're looking at them all. So they're easy to come by, and they come with instructions, but usually you don't have to worry too much. The only thing you really have to do while it's sewing out is change your colors. And in some cases, they're just in one color. So set it and forget it kind of a thing. Walter's laughing, and it's an evil laugh because there are problems sometimes, and we're going to talk about those. Okay, so let's come back to us. All right, so we're going to show you some examples. I'll let Walter hold them up. So you've already seen this guy, the gnome. You know how I love gnomes, and I really love this design. And there's a female version of it as well. I don't have it here to show you, but that. Now, other things you can make. Okay, so talked about the Christmas ornaments. Here's one that I made at one point in time. I made a whole bunch of these, and I tie them to gift bags, and things like that. You can put them in your tree. I've actually even combined them as a greeting card, and put like sticky dots behind them and used it on the front of the card. And I put a little note inside the Christmas card that this can be removed from the card backing, and you can use it as a Christmas tree ornament. Kind of a 2-for-1. Of course, I went through a whole stage at one point when I was doing this in making butterflies. Now that one you can see is multiple colors. It's all thread. This one's a little bit more of an open design. But again, show the backs of them. There is definitely a back.
Yeah.
But in this one you can see some of the white. Actually, the reason you can see the white is because if you look at the front, this was a mistake. You'll notice there was some white coming up. That's my bobbin thread. My tension was wrong and I didn't realize it. It's because I didn't have enough stabilizer. Whereas the angel, she's a solid color.
However, it didn't detract from it.
No, it doesn't detract from it.
It looks okay.
And if you're not going to have it where people are really going to be handling it and looking at both sides of it, again, why bother?
Actually, Steve, this is not the bobbin thread coming up here. There's 2 colors here.
Is it actually 2 colors?
Yeah, it's purple. Look carefully. There, if you look here.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you look here, it's actually 2 colors.
Oh, it is. So it is. Yeah.
So that's actually not a mistake.
It's not a mistake. So there you go. I'm smarter than I thought. Here's another example. This is a wine charm. You know, you put on your wine glasses so you can tell people's wine glasses, or you just want to decorate them up and look nice on a tray. You've got all the wine glass there, and there's a little cut in it. It's designed this way, so you're not cutting into it when it's done. It's already done, and it slips onto your wine glass like that. And you could make them in different colors, you know, and, you know, if people have a tendency to put down their wine glass, come back and drink somebody else's. Well, maybe I'm just talking about something that I do. I always wondered why my glass is never empty. It's because I'm drinking other people's drinks. So that. And now this, I'm going to show you a mistake, first of all. I had my hoop popped when I was doing this. And if you see that little ridge up here at the top, that's not supposed to be there. And if you look down here, you can see there's a hole. Get my finger. See the hole right there? I thought I got my hoop put back together. I had a bird's nest pop up.
That was a real one then.
And that's what it's supposed to look like. Okay. Yeah. This is why I say, if your hoop pops, and there are reasons for your hoop popping, we'll talk about those. It's going to be very hard to try and get it lined up again. And in fact, I thought I had it lined up. I didn't realize until it was all finished. I took it out and went, oh, crap. So that one's a reject. But these are a set that I downloaded, and they nest. So there's a lot of things you can do with these. If you take a look, you can put it this way.
Yeah.
And you just use a glue gun, and you can bend them a little bit. So if you want to give it a little bit more dimension, because I left some of the stabilizer in it, and they look very nice. But one other thing that you could do with this as well, and this is actually, it came with the, when I downloaded the design, let me get it up here so you can see it, you could make a really nice wall hanging by laying them out. So the piece with the little blue color, whatever color you want to call that, blue, silver, whatever, and the leaves, that is actually embroidered the usual way onto that background fabric. And then the idea is you take these pieces that are the freestanding lace and you can sew them down to that or glue them down. And you could take this piece and you could make it into a very decorative pillow front. You could maybe use it in a table runner. I would have this maybe in the center of my table runner, and then the rest of the table runner would be flat. So you could put things on it, but this would be sort of like a centerpiece on there. It could be a festive wall hanging with whatever you want. So there's a lot of versatility in the way that you use the freestanding lace, and it gives such a delicate look to things, and also a very elegant look as well. So what can you use freestanding lace for? And Walter can jump right in here if I miss anything. Okay, I've already mentioned tags for gifts, like those angels or whatever at Christmas time, or birthday presents, or things like that, or on a bag. Walter makes bags. And I attached to the bags that I made for the retreat. We went to Stephanie Stitches' retreat in Georgia. I tied one of these guys onto bottom part of the handles on each one of the bag too. It just dresses up a bag a little bit. You can use them as wall art, which is what I was just speaking to a moment ago. Ornaments, of course. Key fobs. There are ones that OESD has and other companies have that are specifically designed in their size and that to serve as a key fob. But you could use any of these ones that have a hole in them, and many of them will come with a little hole at the top, and you put one of those little slip rings in it or whatever you've got, and you can make it smaller as well. So key fobs are fun. Something a little different.
Not only that, you may get ideas on OESD site about the uses of some of these things. So
yeah, because OESD also has tutorials and things like that, and suggestions for how to use different things. You can make bookmarks, and they have ones that are specifically designed to serve as bookmarks. Although, in my way of thinking, bookmarks are a little passe. Aren't we all reading electronically now? I know
there's still a lot of people.
The old school one that. Yeah. Well, I don't. And you can also use them as regular embroidery on something. I mean, they're freestanding lace, but you could embroider them right to whatever you're doing. The only thing is, you're going to need a lot of stabilizer for that because there are so many stitches in it. It is going to pucker your fabric, but it can be done. It can be done.
Or like you said, you can sew them onto a pillow or something like that.
Yeah.
Decoration.
Yeah, it's decoration. So, or even glue them for that matter with a fabric glue or something like that. Probably the better way to go than to try and actually use one of these designs.
Yeah, they have, or they use that, or people might make them into napkin rings and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. And there's actually ones that have
that are napkin rings.
Or tea light holders.
Glue them onto a napkin ring, or something.
Yeah, I've done both of those before. And I said like tea light holders.
Yeah.
Very popular. Electric tea light, battery operated tea lights again.
Yeah, otherwise it's a fire hazard.
Or
right?
Then you're going to go up with a poof. Yeah. So really, it's endless. Your imagination.
Yeah, it's your imagination.
Only limit. Okay, so let's talk about what you need to get started. Okay, you need your hoop, you need the file that you've purchased, and you're going to need your threads. Okay. Now,
and you need your stabilizer.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say about the threads. Okay, it is a good idea to look at your file, and oftentimes they will come with a color chart, which you can use as a guide. You are not married to those colors. We've said this before.
The gnome could have any color hat. Any color. Right? Yeah. Any color beard. Any color, the rest of them.
Yeah.
Whatever. Make it whatever you like. Right?
Yeah.
So you just use your imagination.
Yeah. But there is a color guide for those things, and you go through your stash of threads and you decide what thread's going to work with.
And you're just using standard embroidery.
You're just using standard embroidery thread. You're not whatever you would use in your machine for other projects. It's the same stuff. There isn't any special thread here. One thing about threads, though, yes, a lot of people like to use or try to use metallic threads in a freestanding lace project. Now, I have done it with mixed results. Um, the problem with metallic threads are some of them are stronger than others, and I can't give you the name of a brand because within a brand, depending on how they have made that particular color of thread, metallic thread, it may have a stronger or less strong what do you want to call it, fibers in it or whatever. So you might have some trouble. It also is going to depend on the design and things like that. It may break and may be very frustrating. I would not suggest trying to use all metallic thread in one design because it's metal, and because your stitches are going top of each other, there is friction because it is actually spun metal that's in that. And that friction, it heats up and it will cut through the other threads, or it'll cut through the one strand of thread that you're using at that moment in time. So you're going to be fighting with it.
And I made something, the Nutcracker thing, right?
Yeah.
And it had on the
Epaulets
or whatever, it had even in the instructions suggested to use some metallic thread. And I made 2 of these items. One, I didn't use metallic thread. I just used a shiny gold color. And the second one, I used metallic thread. And yeah, it looked a little nicer. But to be honest with you, I was just as happy with the plain old gold thread.
And did you have a problem with it when you used the metallic?
It broke a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gone out of my way to use the metallic thread. So,
and we've also mentioned before that metallic threads are best used on a horizontal pin as opposed to a vertical pin. It puts less stress on the thread when it's coming out with it. So just a word of advice. You'll need to experiment and see how it works for you.
And that's not just with freestanding lace, that's with any project.
With any project, actually, with the metallic threads. They are very fragile. Okay, so stabilizer. What are you going to use? Water soluble stabilizer. Now, water soluble stabilizer looks very much like no-show mesh. It looks like a weave that you can see through, and we showed you that when we showed you all the stabilizers and things in one of the previous episodes. But
it does feel like material.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It feels like material, but what it technically is glue. It is a basic, whatever the process is that they make sheets of glue is what it is. So word of advice when using water soluble stabilizer, and ask me how I know. You know, if you go over to your pressing mat or in your cutting or whatever, and you're cutting your water soluble stabilizer, if there's any moisture laying around, like let's say, and how do I know this? Like I took my whole roll once and I just like laid it down on top of my wool pressing mat, and I had just finished steaming something on that, and there was a little bit of moisture in the mat. Guess what happened to my roll of stabilizer? It started to eat away because it doesn't take much. So do not.
And do not handle it with wet fingers.
No, because you'll be picking it up. Well, where did that go? It's magic. It disappeared.
And don't try and steam iron it.
No, don't. Like, is there a wrinkle in it?
I wouldn't think that it holds up to any kind of heat either.
No. So keep your iron away from this stuff, okay? And any moisture from it. So you have the water soluble stabilizer, and I'll tell you, water soluble stabilizer is not cheap, depending where you buy it.
Yeah, there is a type of stabilizer that is not completely water soluble. It's one that's designed to in the wash, so it's not adequate for this freestanding lace. No. You need ones that will actually completely dissolve.
Yeah. So look at the specifications on wherever your supplier is for it. I buy mine all from Monfil. You've heard us talk about it. There's a link for Monfil below. They have the best price.
They call it Ogon or something.
Yeah,
which mean French for water.
Water gone.
Gone, yeah.
Or H2O. They'll call it that too. So but it's water soluble. It works very, very well. I buy it by the 15-yard rolls. Well,
No,
maybe
I
it's
think
more.
you
No, it's
buy
a
it by
100,
100-yard
a hundred
rolls.
yard rolls. Yeah, I go through a lot of it.
Now
Um,
you can, with water soluble, after you're done embroidering something, you can save little bits and pieces
mhm.
and use them within 2 layers or something like
Yeah,
that.
you'd make a little sandwich out of it. I used to do that. I don't do that much anymore, unless it's a really big chunk for some reason. Then maybe I'll hang
I
it
did
from that.
it once when we were doing those freestanding lace houses,
Oh yeah,
and there were lots and lots and lots of little
yeah,
pieces that
yeah.
I had to
Okay.
do. So I had a lot of spare stuff and I started using it, and it does work quite well.
And I've seen people actually talk about making their own sheets of it from little bits by just using a little water, lightly brush it on the and put it. Too much work. But if you're into that, go
Yeah, if
for it.
you're into that, it's
Yeah.
possible.
But really,
I mean, even when I was reusing it, I still ended up with a big bag of
yeah.
scraps.
Yeah, I used to save every scrap of it, but I don't anymore with it. So, so what you need to do is now you're going to use a fair amount of this stuff and don't be stingy with it, okay?
Yeah, you
Yes, it
can't
is
use
expensive.
just one layer.
No, one layer's not going to hack it. I told you earlier that that gnome design is over 40,000 stitches.
Yeah.
Okay. So minimum amount that I used on that are 4 layers of water soluble. Okay. Um, how do you know if you've got enough? Well, when you've done the first few stitches in it, take a look at it. Are things bunching up? Is it pulling on the stabilizer? If it is, add another layer. Now, how do you hoop it? Okay, because the only thing that's going to be in my hoop is water soluble stabilizer, I find I don't have any problem hooping up 4 layers of it right in the hoop.
Yeah, it's actually a very thin
It's very thin.
material, so it actually hoops very well.
And the thing is, you do want to hoop it and not float it at this point because it will tend to ride up because it's very light. So hoop 4 layers of it in. If you need more, then float, but float under the hoop, like we've shown you on previous episodes of that. Just slide an extra layer or two underneath. You probably are not going to need any more than at the most 5 layers.
I think I've used in ones before 6 layers.
You did actually go to
I
6?
went to 6 before, but again, a lot of times 4 works okay.
Yeah, but you'll know once you get going on it with the design. If your design doesn't have, if it has less than that, and usually high number is what you'll get on most designs because it's all
Yeah,
thread.
now if you look at some of the instructions on OESD or something, they may say use 2 layers.
Yeah,
And
bullshit. I call it
I
bullshit.
often when I've done it, it's 2 layers I don't find is enough.
No, no.
Unless it's a very simple design, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know why they say that. Because
I guess maybe to not to frighten you
frighten you because of what it costs.
what it costs to use these.
And when we're saying cost, we're not talking having to take out a small loan to buy this kind of stuff, but it is a
If
little
you
bit of
do,
sticker shot.
if you do a lot of it, if you do a lot of freestanding lace, then you do go through a lot of the stabilizing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you'll figure that all out
Yeah.
very quickly. Okay, so you've got it all hooped up and you've got your file loaded up on your machine and you've got your threads selected. So then it's just like you would do normal embroidery. You follow the thread changes, except the bobbin. Okay, now we've already talked about this, but let's say it again. You will read in your instructions, they'll say, and actually, if you watch the Creative Kiwi videos that show doing this stuff, she likes to have a bobbin for every color she uses in all her embroidery. Um, unless you're not going to see the back at all, it's going to be buried in something. Then you can use just white. However, I never put in a colored bobbin, and here's why. I followed the instructions the first time I ever did freestanding lace. It made sense because your bobbin thread's your bottom thread, right? And your colored, some set are little interruption, nothing important. Okay, where I was talking. So the bobbins, I use white in everything. Now, as I said, I wound them the first time I did it in colors. Oh, it took forever for one thing, because you know you don't want to run out of bobbin thread, and it uses a lot of thread in each of these. So you know we're winding more than one bobbin in
And
most
depending
cases.
on the weight of your thread, some threads will cause you a problem. Using some of the embroidery thread you'll use cause a problem in your bobbin.
Yeah,
Like I know with Floriani, the embroidery thread in the bobbin can cause a problem.
yeah. It doesn't
tension.
like it.
It doesn't like it.
I mean, it's okay in the top. It doesn't like it in the bottom.
And the Monfil brand, the Super B, I have used it in the bobbin, and it works okay. It's the same weight as Floriani, but from what I've read, it's a little bit thinner than the Floriani. So it works okay as the bobbin, but to be honest with you, Steve's right. I wouldn't use it in the bobbin.
Did I hear that correctly? Steve's right.
It is just not worth it. I was using it one time because I had an intense design I was doing that you could see both sides of it, and I wanted to use that colored stuff in the bobbin. But it's a lot of nuisance to do. Like if you look at this gnome here, this is the front of the gnome, right? And you can see that it's perfect. On the back, you might see a little bit of the bobbin piercing through, but not much. It's still almost exact the right color.
Now, if some of your white bobbin thread did show up on the back of this, fabric markers are your best friend. Just take a fabric marker and just dab on where you might see some of the white, if that is something that's really going to bother you. Okay? And I've done that on things before. Fabric markers are your friend in a lot of embroidery cases too, because on an odd occasion, for some reason, the tension in one little part of your design, now I'm talking about regular embroidery, might actually pull up some of the bobbin thread, and you can see that. If you just touch that little spot up with a fabric marker that's as close as you can get it to the original color, no one's going to know. No one's going to know. That's a little tip. Okay.
And that way you don't have to line 50 million different colors of bobbin. And your the bobbin thread you're using is a 60 weight.
Is a 60 weight, yeah. And it's the stuff I buy, it's pre-wound. I buy it, I'll buy the case at Monfil because they have the best price for it. Okay, we are not paid or affiliated with Monfil.
No, they don't give us any bonus.
We don't get any bonus.
We just happen to like their product.
We love Monfil.
And they're a reasonable price.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so we've covered all of the getting things set up. You've got your bobbin in, you've got your threads picked out, and you're ready to go. So you go, except one thing, and Walter may disagree with me on this.
Oh.
Speed kills in freestanding lace. You do not want to do it at full speed. The Janome 550E that we run has a top speed of 800 stitches per minute.
865.
800, I stand corrected. 865 to be exact. A minute. I run it at the lowest speed, 400, because there's so much thread, and because you don't have the stabilizer the same, he's shaking his head no, you can have some problems. You have more chance of breaking thread, and you have more chance of a bird's nest. And Walter says, no, you don't. And why do you say that, Walter?
I run it at top speed all the time. When
you don't do any freestanding lace.
Yeah, well, I have done. I did those houses. Remember, I did the applique and freestanding lace.
But they are not freestanding lace totally. They have fabric.
I've run it at high speed.
But they have fabric.
Too bad.
You're stitching through fabric, so you've got more support.
Do what works best for you.
All right. whatever. You'll figure it out
Okay,
one way or the
fine.
other.
Give me the gnome thing, and I'll run it in mine in high speed. See what happens.
Challenge on. Okay. It's just a tip. Results may vary.
If you're using metallic thread, definitely go to 400.
I use it at 865 stitches all the time. Never. Yeah, right. No, I don't. Okay. I never use metallic thread. Anyways. All right. Moving on. So, got them all up there? Let's take a look at what this looks like. I did the gnome and I recorded it, but I put it on really fast forward. So I'm going to insert a video clip in here now showing you from start to finish the gnome in under 1 minute and 43 seconds.
Ooh, that's faster than 865.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of what the whole process is like, but now we want to break it down into the three major types of stitches that are being used in all in freestanding lace embroidery. And the first one is what they call a mesh. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of that video again at high speed, showing you what we mean by the mesh. And we'll talk about this at the same time. Okay, so you see here that it's working on the jacket actually of the gnome. And you notice there's these lines, diagonal lines it's putting in. That's the foundation stitches or the mesh. What it does is it will weave over top of those to give a good base to hold everything together. So you see now it's going the opposite way in this piece. If it didn't do that, it would just all fall apart. So in a sense, what it's doing is kind of interlocking the stitches as it lays them down on the stabilizer. So when you wash out the stabilizer, it doesn't all fall apart. Now, I made the mistake once of putting in a file that I thought was a freestanding lace and it was a regular file. And I stitched it all out on my stabilizer and it all stitched out okay. Then I rinsed out my stabilizer, and guess what happened to the threads? They all fell out. So that's the mesh. Okay, so the next type of stitch that you'll find in most designs, I was hoping that thing would disappear, is basically what I'm going to call the embellishment stitch. This adds the design details to each piece. So you can see here, it's going around and it's putting in those little curlicues into the jacket piece. And that's usually a combination of straight stitching and then some very small satin stitches to give it texture and more design. So that's important. It's another reason why there has to be a mesh, because there has to be something that holds those things in there together. And I think that's just about done. Yep, that one is done. Okay, so the last type of stitch is a finishing stitch, which is usually a satin stitch, and it goes around all of the pieces on the outside to give it a nice finish, and also to make sure there's no other stitches from the mesh or the embellishment popping up underneath it, and so it won't unravel. So you will have a lot of those stitches in it, because every piece you can see here is outlined in a satin stitch, in a very close satin stitch. So those are the three basic stitches that are used in freestanding lace. Okay, so after you've got the whole piece done, you're going to remove it from your hoop, and you're going to trim the excess stabilizer around the perimeter of your object. Now, you don't want to cut too close, because there's always the danger, if you cut too close, you might cut one or two of the little satin stitches, and if you do, it's all going to unravel. So, and can you fix that? No. Ask me how I know. I've tried to put a little glue on it. No, that doesn't work with it either. And you can't put it back in your hoop and try to go over that area again with satin stitch, because you'll never get it lined up in your hoop. So be very careful. I would leave about a 1/2 inch all the way around the perimeter, because you're going to be dissolving it. And that's what we're going to talk about next, the water-soluble part. And I've got a little video showing you how I get the soluble stabilizer out of the piece, and then how I prepare it to air dry. I'm going to insert that video in here right now. Okay, so now we've got our embroidery piece all done, and I've trimmed away the water-soluble stabilizer pretty close to my piece. I don't want to cut too close on the off chance that I could cut my satin stitches. And now I have filled a sink with a little bit of warm water, just a little above room temperature, and I'm going to drop him in. And there we go. And then I'm going to submerge him, and I'm just going to let him sit in here for about 20-25 seconds, swirling around gently. Doesn't take long, and that will dissolve the water soluble. And so there you go. Now, the more I wash out of this, the looser this is going to get, but I want this guy to dry fairly stiff, so that's all I'm going to do. And that's all there is to getting the water-soluble stabilizer out of it, and I'm going to show you what I do with it next. So the next thing is I want to blot up the excess moisture that is in my piece. That'll make it dry faster. And I'm just going to put them on a couple of double layer of paper towels, and then I just fold some over, give it a pat, and then I take my iron, and it's hot already, and I just gently press down on it, and may even give it a little shot of steam. That's all I do. And then peel back the layers of the paper towel and set him in a safe spot. Very difficult to get him off here when I'm using only one hand. Okay, just take him, set him down here, and I'll let him air dry. He'll take not very long. He'll probably only take at the most an hour, probably more like half an hour. And then I'll give him another little press with my iron, and he is done. Okay. So that's how you do a freestanding lace, and all freestanding laces work the same way. So once you've done one, you can do all the other ones with that. But some tips. Make sure you have your colors organized. This is only a time-saving thing. It's not going to change the quality of what your final product is. It's going to just save you a headache. Oops. Okay, thumbs up for that idea. It's going to save you the headache of running around looking for your threads, because these take a long time to do. Like I said, the gnome was 101 minutes, so that's that's over an hour and a half in time. Plus, that's not taking into consideration having to stop the machine, change your thread color, get your machine threaded, and keep going with it. So basically, the gnome takes almost 2 hours to make, and there are other ones that'll
That's running at 400 speed.
That's yes. If you were running at the speed of Walter, it would be
actually, if you're running at 800 stitches per minute, it doesn't save you half as much time, because the machine only stitches at high speed for a minimal amount of stitches.
Yeah.
It does not actually stitch at high speed for every stitch.
It'll adjust its speed depending on how intricate the piece it's then sewing is. So if it's something that's got a lot of curves through it, then it's going to slow down. I still don't recommend you doing it at high speed. But whatever. If you want to be a Walter, you just do that. You do what you do you. Okay. As we've already said, you do not have to wind a separate bobbin for each color. You can get away with white in most cases. If stitches are too loose, as we said, add more stabilizer. Okay. Do not play with the tension settings on your machine. Most machines will have an auto setting for the tension. Leave it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people we're on a forum, and a lot of people on the forum, as soon as something goes wrong with their machine, they start fiddling with their tension. And that's not usually the problem. It's usually something else like threading or your bobbin or something else. Because I have done a lot of stuff and I've run into a few problems, but I've never touched the tension. It's always something else. And if you start fiddling around with your tension on something, then you'll start causing yourself even more problems.
Yeah. And on that same note too, use a new needle. Now, okay, I'm going to put a little I'm going to contradict myself on this one for a second here. If you've been using the same needle for several projects before you got to your freestanding lace project, use a new needle. Okay, it's got to go through a lot of fabric and it has to make a lot of holes and that. So use a new needle because it'll be sharper with that. It may help you if your thread, for example, is shredding. There are several reasons why it might shred, but if it's shredding and are you still using the same needle you used for the last 10 projects, put in a new needle. It's going to help. It's going to help you to avoid the shredding of your thread. Also, put in a full new bobbin before you start. Now, you can use a partial bobbin, and I often will with it, but it's a bit of a pain in the butt because you're going to go through several bobbins probably on one project of thread. And the least number of times you have to change out your bobbin, the better, because you have to take your hoop off your machine, unless it's a side loader bobbin. And I don't know if any embroidery machines have side loader. Well, I suppose Bernina does.
Yeah.
Because it's a combination machine. But mine's a top loading bobbin. So I have to remove the hoop carefully from that, put in a new bobbin, put the hoop back in. I don't want anything to pop out of the hoop or anything like that, so I won't get it lined up. But it's probably just a good practice to use a brand new bobbin. Now, some of you are going to say, but what a waste. I had half a bobbin in there. Well, bobbins aren't that expensive. However,
especially not the ones we bought.
Use it in your sewing machine. That's what I do. Because our Janome has a sensor. It tells us when it'll come up and say not enough bobbin thread. So you got to change your bobbin. Yeah, but you'll look at it and there'll be about 25% of the bobbin still left, a quarter of the bobbin. Well, Walter shakes his head no.
I have mine set to the lowest amount that it goes down to.
Well, I thought I had mine set to the lowest too, but maybe I don't. Well, I mean,
I don't have that much left on my bobbin when
well, good for you. Okay. Anyways, if you have a substantial amount or what you consider to be a substantial amount and you don't want to throw it away, then take it and you can use it in your sewing machine to use up the rest of the bobbin thread. That's what I do. Anything you want to add to that?
No.
Good.
Either that or take all the thread off and you have a spare bobbin.
And what do you do with the spare bobbin? I have hundreds of them. I save them. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I think I'm going to make a sculpture. Okay, someday. All right. What else? We're getting off topic here. Let's get back on topic. New needle, new bobbin. Oh, make sure you clean and oil your machine before you get started up. If you haven't cleaned that machine in a while, you've done several projects, come on. Don't be lazy because fuzz will hurt.
I find even a tiny bit of fuzz in your embroidery machine can cause you problems, like with thread nests and things like that. So I've done it where where I have a problem with the stitching, and then I pull it out, I clean the bobbin area, and even though it doesn't look like there's a lot of stuff in it, it always stitches better.
Yeah. So, and again, if you're having problems when you're starting your standing lace project, think open up your bobbin case and everything and get rid of those dust bunnies and everybody else there and give it a drop of oil too as well.
Because drop in the middle of the underneath the bobbin case.
Yeah, we've gone over that already before, so I don't want to back up here.
No.
Because but the whole thing about the oil makes a difference, because on an embroidery machine, unlike a sewing machine, embroidery machine is the needles going up and down many, many, many more times than on your sewing machine. So you're going to need to keep it oiled with that. Okay. Also, use the right bobbin case. Now, this will depend on the type of machine you have, the manufacturer. As a Janome owner, we have a choice of bobbins, red dot or yellow dot. Generally speaking, you should use the yellow dot bobbin for freestanding lace because it's a higher tension bobbin. Because there's so much thread going through, and that's what is supporting, it's going to pull the threads just a little tighter. Because you remember, you don't have a piece of fabric you're going through to add a foundation support. So use the higher tension bobbin, whatever for your machine. I don't know Bernina's, I don't know Brother, I don't know what they
I've only
recommend.
ever used the red dot.
Of course you have.
Now, mind you, I haven't done a lot of freestanding lace, so I've only ever used the red dot.
He's been lucky. And he hasn't done a lot of freestanding lace. I have done thousands of hours of freestanding lace. Okay.
So do whatever works for you.
If you're not having any problems, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay? Just telling you from my experience. Take it as you will. And of course, if you want a stiffer finished product, leave more stabilizer in it. You won't see the stabilizer, but because it's a glue, it goes into the fibers. And so if you don't rinse it many times over, see how stiff he is?
He's not floppy.
No. If you want floppy, though, in some cases, then you rinse it longer. You soak it longer to get the stabilizer out. That's up to you. Okay, problems. Bird's nests. Bird's nests are a problem that happen readily with freestanding lace, especially when you're going at the speed of Walter. But he never has that problem. Okay? And the problem with the bird's nest is, and why it does that, is basically because...
And what is a bird's nest?
A bird's nest is a big clump of thread underneath your embroidery project that's a big knot. Okay?
And it'll jam your machine.
And it will jam your machine. And usually it's caused by the thread will get pulled down inside your machine, and it'll get itself tangled up amongst the bobbin itself as it's going around, and it tightens right up and it pulls your whole thing down into the machine. And your machine will make a terrible noise. Your machine will probably stop eventually because there's usually a fail safe in there for that kind of thing. And then you've got the big job of trying to get everything untangled. Now, what do you do in a case like that?
In some cases, it'll pop your hoop.
Yes, I was going to say, it's going to create more tension on your hoop, and it can pop your hoop. If it pops your hoop, that's it. Game over. Start from square one. Okay? Again, why I recommend a slower speed.
And so what can you do if, let's say, your hoop doesn't pop?
If your hoop... Well, what do you mean if your hoop doesn't pop?
It does not pop.
Okay, it doesn't pop. All right.
Okay, so you got thread nest.
Okay, for the first thing you have to do is you have to release your hoop from your machine, like the whole assembly, not taking the layers apart, okay? So you may not be able to do that very readily because this big bird's nest has been sucked down inside the machine and it's holding it down and it's tight. Do not force your hoop up and try to break the threads, because you're going to break the hoop or you're going to put your machine out of alignment. There are a set of, they're little scalpels, but they have hooks on the ends of them. Actually, I should have brought them out to show them to you. And I have them right here in my drawer because I keep them very handy to my embroidery machine because I use them on a regular basis. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. You can buy these on Amazon. See the hook? That is an X-Acto knife blade that is curved. And all you need to do is just gently lift up your hoop, just a quarter of an inch, enough that, you know, that you can slide this under because it's flat, slide it under, hook that bird's nest, and you may have to saw a little bit, gently, but saw, and your threads will cut off. And then you can take the whole hoop out, make sure your needle is up and your foot is up. Take your hoop out of the machine, open up your bobbin case, and pull out all the little pieces of thread that have wrapped around that bobbin. Now, look at your bobbin very carefully. Depending on how bad the bird's nest is, it can distort the shape of the bobbin. And what I mean is not the actual plastic case or metal case that it's in, but the threads themselves that are wound around. You look at them and they look like an oval. That's it. Don't use that bobbin. It's not, just throw it away. Okay? It's not worth, I know, but it's got thread on it. Yes, it does. Throw it away. Because
it'll cause you more problems.
It's going to cause you problems. Do not put it back in your embroidery machine. Do not put it in your sewing machine. Throw it away.
No. If you don't have one of these, you can use a very sharp kitchen knife.
Yeah.
If you have to. But one of these is actually really nice to have.
I don't know. I think I paid $11 on Amazon for a set of two. And they came in this lovely little case. They don't all come in a case. And it came with replacement blades as well. So it's like a little kit. And here's the second blade. It looks very much like the first one. It's just there's a slight difference in the curve and the length.
Yeah, I bought a different one on Amazon, but it's the same. There's a number of them ones that you can order.
It's a very handy tool to have. So you may actually have to take your foot plate off your machine as well, because some of those little threads may have wrapped in around your cutter that's in there inside the machine, the thread cutter, and it probably has pulled your whole bobbin case, not the bobbin itself, but the case the bobbin goes in, may have dislodged it, and you're going to have to reseat it. So while you're in there, it's a very good idea to take your little brush and just brush away things, because there may be little strands of thread pieces that come from that. And then put that assembly all back together, put your hoop back in, and carry on where you left off.
You carry on where you left off. There is a possibility, though, that you may get a second bird's nest if you carry on from where you started.
Yeah.
Because there's a glut of threads at that point where it stopped. So you might want to advance the machine a couple of stitches.
Yes. Oh, and I'm sort of saying, turn your whole hoop upside down and look and see if there's a big knot on there. Very carefully, either using these little tools, but you don't want to cut your stabilizer, okay? Remove some of them, or a handy little device for that is the electric trimmer that we've talked about before, that we call the electric seam ripper, but you can buy at dollar stores in some cases for like $4 or whatever Canadian, which are basically a hair trimmer
or a shaver
and you can,
it's a beard trimmer type shaver. Yeah,
you can kind of shave those little threads down. You don't have to get them all out completely, but if it's really a thick mass, remember your needle is going to go through that again, and it could cause you a problem.
Another bird's nest
And pull your hoop out.
Now, if that does happen and you get a second bird's nest, advance your machine manually by a couple of stitches.
Well, advance it where? Ahead or behind?
Ahead.
Yeah, ahead. But in some cases too, your bird's nest might have, you may have to go backwards again and start.
You'll have to play it by ear.
You'll have to play it by ear to say it. The first time this ever happens to you, you will panic and you will scream, and that's where the F in freestanding lace stands for a different word that starts with F, okay? But as time goes by and you do more of them, like anything, practice makes perfect. You'll get used to it. You'll know what to do. You will not panic. Okay.
You just say, oh, crap.
Yeah, oh, crap. Yeah. Or the F word. Now, if we've already talked about hoop popping, because it's under tension and the whole bit. And if your hoop pops, well, I showed you the example of mine. I thought I had it lined up. I didn't. And you want to know something? You'll spend hours trying to line it up perfectly. Cut your losses, start the piece again. You'll be using that F word in freestanding lace again when you do that, because usually those kind of things happen in the last 5 minutes of a 2-hour project.
Well, sometimes if it's the last 5 minutes of a 2-hour project, it may not be terrible.
Well, you might be able to fudge it,
or you may be able to deal with the fact that it doesn't look all that bad.
Yeah, if you can live with it.
Yeah, like I mean, if it does something like in the middle of all your satin stitches, that might not be.
Yeah, that might not look good. So now I hope this hasn't scared you away from trying freestanding lace, because the end result is really worth it, and they're very impressive. And some designs are so, like I showed you that angel, the three-dimensional angel. She is fantastic. And you know, if you give that as a gift to somebody, they will think you are absolute genius.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tell them you did it on your machine. You just say, where did you learn to embroider like that? And how'd you? Oh, I've been working on it for years. For years. Yeah, doesn't hurt to lie in that case. Okay, so we had some comments from last week that we want to address as well. So we have one comment here says, and some of these are complimentary, and thank you so much. People seem to be enjoying the series and getting much out of it, and that makes us feel good that you are, because we put a lot of time into these sessions, as you know. So she says, I want to thank you. This comes from Rita Stone King 4889. I want to thank you both for these wonderful instructional videos. I have learned more in the past weeks than I had in the 3 years that I've had my 550E. I actually feel excitement when planning my next projects, as you have removed the mystery and fear. You mentioned that no one is asking questions. I think this is probably because you're doing such a great job of covering the subject matter. Well, thank you for that, Rita. But also, we want to tell you why we are doing these. When we first got into machine embroidery, there was a learning curve, and there are many videos on YouTube about what to do and how to do it. But I find many of them fall short. They make some basic assumptions that you can never make. Like, I made an assumption a few weeks ago that you knew how to hoop.
Yeah.
And Walter says, well, no, we need to go over that. And he was right. We did need to go over that, because we do it all the time. So it's second nature to us. But I have found too that in some cases, yep, thumbs up for that. In a lot of cases, they don't talk about the problems. And one reason why I started Idiot Quilter was because I was tired of watching videos where everything worked perfectly the first time. And I know they don't. And it's the same with machine embroidery.
Yeah, machine embroidery. Everybody sees machine embroidery as putting nice little things on baby clothes and on towels and things like this, little monograms and stuff. And that's what they think of as machine embroidery. But when we talk about machine embroidery, we're talking about things like this too.
Yeah.
And these are things that people don't see when they're right away when they buy a machine, that there is a possibility of doing more things than putting a monogram on a towel.
And I dare say there may be a few of you out there that had no idea until today what freestanding lace was in embroidery. Another comment, this comes from Phyllis Critchfield, something like that. Sorry, Phyllis, if I've said your last name wrong, and I probably have. Really enjoying the embroidery series. Very informative. I love doing appliques. I used to love to cut them out like you do, but arthritis in my hands got bad and had to quit doing that. So I bought a Brothers Scan and Cut to pre-cut my appliques and couldn't be happier about it, and can now continue to enjoy doing what I love to do. Okay, this was a little confusing to me because I don't cut out my appliques using my machine. In fact, last week when I showed you what I was doing with an AccuQuilt, I did not cut out those shapes. I used the embroidery tack down stitches as my guide for trimming the fabric. Got to stop putting my thumb up. For trimming the fabric right in the hoop. But she might mean if she's using a Brothers Scan and Cut, and if she has a Brother embroidery machine, you can use the Brothers Scan and Cut machine will work with creating an embroidery file for a pattern you have cut out. That will work in the embroidery machine. So in essence, what happens is you can transfer that file to your brother embroidery machine, lay down the piece to scan and cut out, and then it will embroider all the way around it to put it down. But that's only with the brother system. There is a third-party software program, I think, that might do that as well, but it's very, very expensive, and it's part of, I think, sort of like a digitizing program for it. I do not know. Well, that's not true. In Artistic Digitizer, there is a way to do something similar, but you're not really cutting out the shape. And, well, I'm not going to get into
Yeah,
that.
we have never really
We've
done
never
that.
really done it. I toyed with it once, but that's it. But anyways, yeah. So I'm not sure exactly where she was going with this comment, but that was our interpretation of it. This one's a fairly long comment. This series is so informative and helpful. This comes from Cabin. So, my Janome dealer is an hour and a half away, so classes weren't an option. So whatever I've learned has been from YouTube and trial and error. Could you touch on adding text to an imported design? I'm just doing this now, but haven't stitched it out yet, so I'm not sure if I've done it correctly. Okay, we are going to do that. It is very simple. I do it all the time. And you do not need to have an embroidery software package, digitizing package to do it. You can usually do it within the editing features that are built right into your machine. And we're going to, in another few weeks, we're going to actually go through some of the editing features, including adding text, that are in the machine. So yes, we are going to be talking about that, just not today. Also, I have Artistic Digitizer, but as you say, the learning curve is huge. I imported a design into Artistic Digitizer as per usual. I had the R36 hoop chosen, but when I tried to export my design to my USB, I got a message telling me that the design was too big for the hoop, which really surprised me. There was a choice of large, medium, and small designs. I had to choose the medium design, so when I imported the design into my 550E, I then enlarged it by 20%, but I would rather have just used the large design without having to modify it. Since I'm a novice at AD, Artistic Digitizer, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. It was a garden flag design from OESD. I need to find a techie high school student to help me learn AD. I've looked through all the notes, etc., that Anne Hine has developed for AD, but it's like learning a whole new language. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here I don't understand. And so I'm going to apologize right off the bat that we can't answer this question, probably to the satisfaction of this individual. And here's what's throwing me. She says that when she imported a design into AD's and she set it up for an R36 hoop, because you can choose your hoop for your design in Artistic Digitizer. And then when she was done doing whatever she was doing with that, she tried to export her design to her USB so she could put it in her machine. But she said she got a message telling her that the design was too big for the hoop, which really surprised her. Okay, first of all, if you're importing to a USB from your computer, you're not going to get any kind of warning. The only warning you might get is if your USB drive was full. So I'm assuming she got this warning when she loaded up the file onto her machine. I don't know why she got that.
Now, if she resized that design to a larger size, and you know how you sometimes get a pink.
Yes, if she went outside of the size of the hoop.
There's the hoops require a certain amount of space around the outside, and your design's in the middle, right?
That's an Artistic Digitizer.
It's an Artistic Digitizer, right?
So
if you end up enlarging that design too big,
and it goes outside of that border that you're not the no man's land area that you're not supposed to sew in, it will enlarge. It will look on your screen like it's enlarged, but if it's outside, it won't stop you from enlarging it beyond that.
Right.
That border. So maybe that's what she didn't realize that.
And then when she tried to save it, which she may not have saved it, she may have just gone right to exporting it, right?
Maybe.
But it might give you a warning. I don't know. I haven't looked at Artistic in a while. I'd have to play around with that. It may have given you a warning that it was too big for the hoop.
because yeah, so there's something else going on here that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
So that's the best we can do. We're making some
We're
assumptions here.
making assumptions. I'd have to go in and open Artistic Digitizer, play around with it a bit to see if I can figure out what she did.
Well, we'd also have to know for her to give us a step by step what she
Yeah.
did from beginning right to end of
Yeah.
this and what she was seeing on the screen. And yeah, this is a mistake. I have made this mistake. I have had that warning come up that it is too big for the hoop. But that was when I first got Artistic Digitizer. I was not aware of the boundary because it looked, in the way it shows you on the screen, it looked like, yeah, not a problem. It's going to fit in that hoop. But as Walter said, it's sort of a pinky area. And in that area, if you have stitches, part of your design goes into that area, it's going to show up. But when you import it, the machine is going to say it's too big for the hoop. For it. Maybe. That might be the problem. Not sure. Pet Mom says, okay, it seemed that on one block, she's referring to last week when I showed the AccuQuilt, how to do the AccuQuilt files, using them in the embroidery machine. She said it seemed that on one block there was quilting around the applique on the background. When did you put that quilting on, and did you do that on the machine underneath the applique or after you put the applique on? Okay, I thought that I spoke to that in the video. But maybe it wasn't clear, or this individual missed it. But what she said, if you remember, I showed you two versions of the sunbonnet suit that I got the embroidery design from AccuQuilt for. One I just did on a background, but the second one I actually did it on a quilted background. And I talked about that. Yes, I did the quilting first, and I did it in the hoop. I had a design that I could use as a quilting design. And then I loaded up the Sunbonnet Sue file and did that on top of the quilting. Okay, that's how I got it in there. Now, there is a way, but you have to have a digitizer for it, where you can actually put your design in and then have it do the quilting design all the way around the outside of the applique. But again, that's beyond the scope of what we're going to be talking about, because that's all to do with Artistic Digitizer, the digitizing program. But it's simple to do it when you have it in the hoop. It's just two programs. You're just overlaying one on top of the other. That's all there is to it. Okay, now, the traveling quilter said, she mentioned something called a hoop buddy. And I sort of knew what she might have been referring to, but I did a search, and at first I couldn't find this. But she says it's a weighted stand type thing. Your hoop hooks in and frees up your hands when hooping. I just use it with my jumbo hoop, not need it with my smaller ones. Okay, I did a little research, and I found two websites. One is Bernina website, and they have a hoop, and they call it Hoop and Buddies. And it's meant for putting a hat in. It's a frame, a hoop, that you can put a cap in, and then you can embroider on the front of the cap.
Actually, you can buy one of those hoops for the Janome as well, but they're expensive. And I have seen videos where you actually just can pin the hat into a standard hoop if you want to use it.
But that isn't what I think she's referring to. I think what she's referring to is a hooping station. And there's a lot of them on the market. And this is what they look like. And you can see the price. And this is American dollars. Okay. That one looks very elaborate. And really, I'm not sure whether it's worth the expense. I mean, there's cheaper ones, but they're still over $500.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of them are geared to using multi-needle machines.
Yeah.
Because those hoops that they're showing are multi-needle machine hoops.
Yeah. They're more for, I think, people who are possibly doing things on a large scale, like you're making, multiple T-shirts.
See, look at it. It says Hoop Master Hooping Station for Janome MB4, which is the multi-needle machine.
Yeah.
And they're showing you and assisting you placement inside, placement for looping for a shirt.
Yeah. So I guess you get the exact placement because it is a bit awkward when you're trying to do a t-shirt in an ordinary hoop because you have to like put the t-shirt, you've got to stretch part of it over the hoop and then you've got to roll back the backing on it so it's not, that part isn't in under where your needle's going to go because you'd stitch your shirt together. It's a little bit awkward, it's a little bit harder, so I guess is the idea of this thing, it makes your life easier.
I don't do a lot of I have not yet done a lot of embroidery on garments, so it may be a little bit something to look into if you're doing a garment. But to be honest with you, neither Steve or I have any expertise in using one of these. So
no, and I'm certainly not going to have any in the near future because I'm not going to be spending that kind of money on something like this that I would use once every blue moon, if ever, with it. But like I said, I think they're geared more towards people that are trying to make a business out of their embroidery, and usually those people are using multi-needle hoops,
right,
as opposed to that. So, now Traveling Quilter did say though she has one, and I would be interested, Traveling Quilter, if you see this, if you could send me a link to the one you are actually using, because I'd like to see it. Because as I said, the only thing I found were this site that had all these different ones that were all like a lot of money, a lot of money. Okay, so that's everything you want to know and then some about freestanding lace. Do try it. Give yourself lots of time though. Don't leave your machine when you're doing freestanding lace because, well, you know, the machines, as soon as you turn your back on them, want to do something that they're not supposed to do. But you do want to, for the first time anyways, you want to be monitoring it very carefully to avoid any kind of major problems. But don't be afraid to try it, okay? You're not really going to wreck your machine if something does go wrong, okay? Usually, all right? So enjoy it, have fun. It's a whole new dimension. Now, speaking of whole new dimension, we're going to build on our last two episodes in the episode next week, episode 8. We're going to talk about 3D structures. And 3D structures usually use a combination of freestanding lace and freestanding applique, and how did we put one of them together as well, because they're usually done in multiple parts. And we'll show you some examples of some of the structures we have made. You've heard Walter refer to his nutcracker. No, that is not a term of endearment for me. And we've made houses, gingerbread houses, like embroidered gingerbread houses. We've done haunted houses. I've done pumpkins. I've done all kinds of seasonal things with it. And they take a lot of time, but they are a lot of fun. And the end result is spectacular. So that's next week. So tune in for that. Okay. Any parting words?
No.
No.
Speed doesn't kill.
Speed kills. Speed kills. Speedy Gonzalez? Maybe not. He does everything fast. Not well, but everything fast. Okay, well, I'm leaving now.
No, I don't do everything. You're
No,
Mr. Speedy. You're Mr. Quilt Speedy. So
never mind. Okay, have a good week. We'll see you later. Bye for now.